Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel, Yam Heam Educamix TV 25. Please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much. Now we are going to tackle about our country as a colony of Spain. The Philippines was a colony of Spain for 333 years from 1565 to 1898. So how did the Spanish officials rule our country? What changes did Spain make to the Philippine government? How did the Filipinos react to Spanish rule? So we will understand more of the Filipino attitude to government which we inherited from the Spanish era in our country. And later, we will study why the Filipinos revolted against the Spanish colonial masters. Central government under Spain. Spain established one central government in the Philippines. Many independent barangays of our ancestors disappeared. One government alone ruled most of our country. Thus, for the first time in our history, we became united as one nation called Filipinas or Philippines. The rest of the world came to know our country by that name. However, Philippine territory was very different during Spanish times. These are the differences in the territory ruled by central government. First, the island archipelagos of Guam, the Marianas, the Carolines, and the Palaos in the South Pacific were included in the Philippine territory during Spanish times. These islands are now separated and no longer part of the Philippine territory. Most of Mindanao and Sulu were excluded. Spain claimed supreme power over them, but only a few coastal areas were really under its control. The Filipino Muslims or Moros were not conquered by Spain. And lastly, interior mountain regions of Luzon and Visayas were also excluded. They were not colonized by Spain. So the tribes in the highland regions like Ifugaos and Igorots remained independent like the Moros. The Philippines was a colony of Spain for 333 years, from the time when Legazpi came in 1565 to the time when Spain lost to America in 1898. Being a colony means our land and our people belonged to the Spanish monarch. The Filipinos practically had no say in who ruled them, what laws applied to them, or what rights they had. In short, our rulers, our laws, and our rights were all dictated by Spain. The Spanish king or queen was the supreme power in Spain in its colonies like the Philippines. This system of government is called monarchy. In this system, power came from the king who appointed the colonial officials. He also issued the royal decrees or orders. At first, the Council of the Indies helped the king to rule the colonies. When it was abolished, the Minister of the Colonies took charge of colonial affairs. Monarchy is different from our present system of government. At present, we have a democracy where power comes from the people. The people can change their public officials in a democracy. The monarchy of Spain was inherited at the time, so we could not change who ruled over us. Until 1821, the Philippines really was ruled by the Spanish viceroy in Mexico in the name of the king. This was because the Philippines was colonized from Mexico, the Spanish colony in the New World or Americas. However, after Mexico got its independence in 1821, the Philippines was ruled directly from Madrid, Spain. As the chart shows, the Spanish Governor-General represented the King of Spain in the Philippines. He had great powers. He could make laws himself. He could appoint and remove any official except those appointed by the king. He was the commander-in-chief of the colonial armed forces. Therefore, he was usually also a military officer in the Spanish Army or Navy. For a long time, until 1861, he was also president of the Royal Audiencia, like the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court today. In short, the Governor-General acted as king in the Philippines. He was the one to decide if he will impose the decree of the king or not. He has a tenure of office for 2 years and 10 months. so he is eager in accumulating wealth before his term in office expired. So it is not their purpose to protect the people but to protect their interest. There were 115 Spanish governor-generals in our country. The first one was Miguel Lopez de Legazpi in 1565 to 1572, and the last was Diego de los Reyes in 1898. The highest court of the land during Spanish times was the Royal Audiencia. It was equivalent to the Supreme Court today. The Royal Audiencia decided important cases appealed to it from the lower courts. It could also make local ordinances and check upon all financial records. It ruled the country temporarily when the Governor-General died or was absent. The laws of the Philippines were made by the Spaniards. Thus, most of these laws were for the benefit of Spain and the Spaniards, not the Filipinos. However, some of these laws were good and Christian. For example, slavery was abolished in 1589. Human and child sacrifices were abolished. Divorce and polygamy were also banned. The major laws were compiled in a legal code called Law of the Indies. From time to time, the Spanish king issued royal decrees or orders, which had the force of laws. Other Spanish laws covered such as Penal Code, Civil Code, Code of Commerce, and Copyright Law. So makikita natin dito that most of our laws came from the Spaniards. Next is the local government. Spain formed the origin of our present system of local government. The country was divided into provinces with towns and cities. The cities had their own government called ayuntamiento. The city council, known as cabildo, was headed by the mayor or alcalde. The provinces or alcaldes were groups of towns and barangays. Each province was ruled by a Spanish official called alcalde mayor. He was appointed by the governor-general. Spain did not destroy the old barangays. These were grouped together to form towns called pueblos. Each town was governed by Filipino official called Gobernador Silios or Little Governor. He was elected yearly by prominent citizens of the town. At the head of each barangay was a Filipino official called Cabeza de Barangay or Barangay Captain. At first, he was the hereditary head of the area or the former dato. Later, his position was also elected. His main duty was to collect taxes or tributes. These elections for some local officials were really fixed. They were not open to everyone. The winning candidate was usually the favorite of the parish priest who was the real power in the town. Only a few male voters or the rich voted. The idea of free and popular elections did not start until the American era in the Philippines. The government debts. Since the beginning of the Spanish rule, the colonial government in the Philippines suffered debts year in and year out. Even then, the government officials could not support the expenses of the government. Their income from taxes, customs duties, and other public fees were not enough. The government debts were due to two reasons. The first reason is that the government officials were dishonest. They engaged in graft and corruption, like bribery, cheating, and stolen wealth. In short, they wanted to enrich themselves instead of collecting the right amount of taxes or fees due to the government. The second reason is that the ordinary people lacked cooperation and loyalty to the state. The Filipinos did not really love their country because it was ruled by foreigners. They looked on taxes and other government fees as a heavy burden. As much as possible, they avoided paying anything to the government. To lessen the financial worries of the colony, Spain granted it the annual subsidy or real situado. Starting in 1606, the Mexican viceroy sent an annual subsidy to Manila. The average amount of the subsidy was 250,000 pesos. So next is the Spanish population. So gaano nga ba karami ang mga Espanyol dito sa Pilipinas noon na nagawa tayong sakupin for 333 years? The Philippines was far from Spain and Mexico. As a colony, it was never really profitable to Spain, so it did not attract many Spanish settlers. Early in the 17th century, there were only about 2,000 Spaniards in the Philippines. Of those, 400 were missionaries. The rest were soldiers and officials. In the 19th century, the Spanish residents numbered a little over 4,000. Until the end of the Spanish rule, the Spanish population was relatively small. Most Spaniards, like officials, soldiers, and merchants, live in the cities. In the provinces and remote towns, only the missionaries live as the White Castilla among the native population. Next is the Filipino population. There was no population boom during the Spanish era. The Filipino population increased slowly, as you can see on the screen. That is the Filipino population from 1565 to 1896. There were even times when the Filipino population decreased, as you can see on the screen. That is the Filipino population from 1591 to 1655. This decrease was because of the Dutch naval attacks on the Philippines in the 17th century. Many Filipinos were killed in these battles, and many more fled to the hills for safety, thus leaving the towns and cities. Now we will compare the Filipino population with the Spanish population. It will be obvious that the Filipinos always outnumbered the Spaniards. Makikita natin na mas marami talaga ang mga Pilipino kaysa sa mga Espanyol, kaya ito ang tanong. How did the Spaniards keep on controlling the Filipinos? Paano nga kaya yun nagawa ng mga Espanyol? At ang pangalawang tanong, what was the secret behind the Spanish power? So ano nga kaya ang sekreto bakit nasakop tayo ng mga Espanyol for 333 years? So alamin natin ito. Next is the Christianity and Spanish colonization. So alamin natin dito kung ano ang sagot sa dalawang tanong. The Spaniards were really able to keep the Philippines as a colony because most of the Filipinos became Christians. The secret behind Spanish power was the cross, not the sword. The Filipinos were attracted to Christianity because of 3 reasons. First reason is that the message of Christianity appealed to the Filipinos. The good news or gospel behind the Christian religion is found in the Bible. According to John 3:16, that for God so loved the world that He gave His only beloved Son, so that those who believes in Him will be saved and have everlasting life. This message of Christianity really appealed to the Filipinos. Second is Filipino life was approved by Christianity. Its message about God's love and the brotherhood of men stopped the old barangay feuds. It gave our people a better way of life. It reduced usury, drinking, and swearing. It banned the killing of children, human and animal sacrifices, and other brutal practices. It discouraged divorce, polygamy, adultery, and live-ins before marriage. Third is, the missionaries helped the soldiers in the conquest and pacification of the Philippines. The success of Spanish colonization was due largely to the early missionaries in the 16th and 17th century. The missionaries were not only preachers of the gospel, but they were also pioneers of Western civilization. They brought the new European arts, sciences, education, literature, and music to our shores. They built schools, colleges, universities, printing presses, libraries, hospitals, and orphanages. They introduced new plants and animals from Mexico and Europe. They taught our people new industries like making colored dyes, bricks, and stone houses. They wrote the first histories, grammars, dictionaries, and maps. And they constructed the first roads, bridges, forts, irrigation systems, and public works. Side by side with the civil government was the church organization. The head of this organization was the Archbishop of Manila. He was appointed by the Pope upon recommendation of the Spanish king. Below the archbishop were bishops who headed a group of parishes or dioceses. Below the bishops were the parish priests who took charge of the town parishes. Manila started with a bishop in 1578. The first bishop of Manila was Monsignor Domingo de Salazar. He defended the Filipinos from abuses by the other Spanish officials. Later in 1595, Manila was raised to an archbishopric with an archbishop as head of the church here. We had no cardinals then. The first missionaries who came to our shores belonged to different religious orders. These religious orders were the Augustinians, the Franciscans, the Jesuits, the Dominicans, and the Recollects. Next is the power of the church. During the Spanish times, the Catholic Church was the official religion of the people. No other religion was allowed to exist. This practice of allowing only one religion in the country is called the union of church and state. The union of church and state worsened the political condition in the Philippines because the Catholic priests then had a great influence in government. The archbishops, bishops, and parish priests received their salaries from the government. The government paid for the churches, schools, and charities run by the religious orders. Until 1764, the archbishops could act as the temporary governor-general of the Philippines. The priors exercised political, economic, and other non-spiritual powers. They controlled educational system, they collected taxes, and controlled municipal elections. Ito yung mga rason kung bakit mas lalong lumala pa ang political condition ng Pilipinas sa panahon ng mga Espanyol. During also in Spanish times that an archbishop became the acting head of state. He was Archbishop Manuel Rojo, who became acting governor-general during the British invasion in 1762 to 1764. So yan yung mga kapangyarihan ng simbahan na siyang lalong nagpahirap sa mga Pilipino noong unang panahon. Next is the only Christian nation in Asia. Spain's dream of an empire in Asia started with its conquest of the Philippines. The Spaniards used the Philippines as a military base and a mission center to spread Spanish power and Christianity to other parts of Asia. Although the Spanish dream of an Asian empire failed, it kept the Philippines as a mission field. Thus, other nations in Asia are non-Christian. They are Buddhist, Confucian, Hindu, Islam, and Shinto. The Philippines is the only Christian nation in Asia. From the Philippines, the gospel of Christianity was beamed to other nearby nations. The Philippines was the spiritual light of Asia as far back as the 16th century. Today, missionaries from the Philippines are still going to other Asian countries to spread Christianity. Next is why Spain kept the Philippines. Several times in our history, Spain almost left the Philippines because it was a big economic loss to the king. It gave no economic profits to the Spanish crown, and it cost a lot to support the expenses of the colony. It was truly a miracle that the Spanish kings decided to keep the Philippines. They were reminded of their obligation to spread Christianity. This obligation was first found in the last will and testament of Queen Isabel I, the greatest queen of Spain in 1504. Her grandson, Philip II of Spain, told his advisors that he would not abandon the Philippines even if it was a heavy burden on the economy. He said, "For the conversion of the people of the Filipinos, I would gladly spend the riches of the Indies." In 1619, the advisors of the new king, Philip III, the son of Philip II, again told him to withdraw from the colony. When news reached Manila that Spain might abandon the country because of the great expense in maintaining the place, Father Hernando Moraga sailed to Madrid to plead with the king. When he reached the royal palace in Madrid, the frail old priest knelt before King Philip III and said, "In God's name, please do not abandon the Philippines, Your Majesty. Remember what your illustrious great-grandmother, Queen Isabel the Catholic, stated in her testament." Deeply touched by the old padre's words, the king replied, "Go with God, Father Moraga. Be assured that I will not give up what my father had conquered and left me." In 1621, the Council of the Indies recommended again that Spain abandon the Philippines or exchange it for Brazil with Portugal. But Father Hernando de los Reyes, Coronel, royal advisor in Madrid, asked King Philip IV to keep the Philippines for the glory and honor of God. Thus, Spain kept the Philippines as a colony. For a long time, most Filipinos lived under Spain and accepted the Catholic religion. Yan po yung mga naitalang kasaysayan sa our country as a colony of Spain. Sana naman may natutunan kayong muli dito sa ating Yam Heam Educamix TV 25. So I'm your teacher May, leaving these words of John Maxwell: successful and unsuccessful people do not vary greatly in their abilities. They vary in their desires to reach their potentials. So that's all for today. Thank you so much.
Till I ain't no more gone.